Well, Norwegian Cruise Lines is reporting that cruises to Cuba have turned out to be, quote, a home run for the company. Last week we showed you how tourism is fueling the economy in Cuba, as well as the challenges both to the relationship with the United States and within the island nation itself.
This week, TWILA's Neil Melancon explores the idea of reconciling with Cuba in hopes of restoring trade. What he has found was a path toward mending old wounds.
Even though this is not Bob Mackey's first trip to Cuba, he's learning something new every day he's here.
Sugarcane's growing an inch a day right now.
As well as having a great time with sugarcane producer Herman Wagaspak and the rest of this Cuba tour, they can relax because we now know that Cuba is not the threat to the U.S. sugar industry we once feared. Instead, here in this verdant paradise, agriculture is for feeding its populace and the hungry tourists who swarm Cuba 3 million strong each year. Still, there is a strong ag interest in Cuba, especially for Louisiana's rice farmers, for whom Cuba was once a large market worth $1 billion each year. It's a hope that keeps getting perpetually dashed as the market never seems to quite open up, and even if it did, there's no guarantee Cuba would have the funding to buy rice at pre-embargo levels. Perhaps no better place on the tour shows the struggle and reconciliation between our two countries than here. This is Vivero a la Mar, a 25-acre organic farm just outside of Havana. It was formed in the 90s in the wake of the collapse of the Soviet Union. During that so-called special period, Cuba was deprived of many of the implements in modern agriculture, such as farm chemicals, genetic research, and farm machinery. Many people went hungry, and they are only now just rebuilding. Still, Cuba must import more than 50% of its food from outside sources, while more than 50% of its farmland lies fallow. It's here in this organic garden that we meet Ramon Portal, humbly chopping up coconuts to refresh tourists in the Cuban summer heat. Ramon is a veteran, a man once the enemy of the United States. He shows us the picture of him shirtless here during the Revolution. But times have changed, as can be seen in the pictures he's acquired in his 81 years. The picture he's most proud of, though, is him with Pope John Paul II. Kneeling mere feet from the pontiff, the event was life-changing for Portal, as the Pope's visit was profoundly changing to Cuba. Ramon is not just a worker here, but a plant doctor, a man specializing in natural remedies for everyday ailments, which are sold along with vegetables to the citizens of Havana. Bob Mackey asked the doctor if he had something for his knee, which he had surgery on recently.
I've been needing that for a long time.
Inflamed from days of walking around in Cuba, Ramon looks for certain herbs that will help. After gathering them up, he begins to make a poultice and applies the herbs to Bob's swollen knee. He also has herbs for our hats to keep our literal cool. As I attempt to translate for them, two things become clear. One, the herbs really work.
Soothing.
Two, Bob himself is a veteran like Ramon. See, the last time Bob was here was in 1962 as a member of the United States Navy during the Cuban Missile Crisis. Bob described the blockade of the island as tense as it was complete, saying you could almost walk from ship to ship as they surrounded the Castro regime. Yet here, more than 50 years later, these two men, veterans, farmers, and now mostly retired, are finding healing during a dramatically changing Cuba. And maybe if they can find reconciliation, so too can our two countries, so close and yet so far away. This trip was organized by the LSU Ag Leadership Alumni Association. During the leadership training, each class goes on an international trip designed to expose future leaders to ag issues in other countries and how they handle it. For instance, I went to Chile and Argentina on our trip, and these trips have been so successful that the alumni have decided to start doing them as well, according to Director Bobby Swallow.
Our alumni came up with the idea. We've been looking to do an alumni trip, alumni of the Ag Leadership Program, and at our business meeting in 2016 the concept of Cuba came up and we started doing work on it. We worked with a couple of different groups and settled on doing it at this time of the year because we knew we had to work at least a year in advance to at least get the hotel properties that we wanted. So, but I'll go back again. The alumni said they wanted to start doing something like this, and the question was raised, what about Cuba? And pretty much there was a consensus in the room that that's where we should go, and that's what we've done.
The LSU Ag Leadership class is taking applications for its next class, which starts next year. You can find more on our website at twilatv.org, including, Avery, a link to their brand new Ag Leadership Facebook page, which they just started.
I know Bobby Swallows had a lot of fun posting to that. Now, you've gotten your 2 stories out of your system from Cuba. What did you come back with? What did you say, wow, that's Cuba?
Well, I really have to go back to that last part of that piece I just did, where I'm interacting with Bob Mackey and finding out about him at the U.S. Navy, because really, we're at a changing critical point in Cuba where it's getting ready to change. The Castro, the current Castro, Raul Castro, is declining to run for president again, so they're going to have a new president. Only 1/3 of the country is communist, and non-communists can run for the presidency. So there's a chance that we're going to see a real revolutionary change. So I have that window where everything's changing in Cuba, and then I had the window on history with Bob there, who was there at the Cuban Missile Crisis. So it was really just an amazing, junction of perspectives there that really opened my eyes to the entire country.
And it's something that we'll never see again, because it is going to be forever changed once everything goes down.
Absolutely, especially with all those tourist dollars pouring in.
Oh yeah, thank you very much, Neil Melancon.